Hello, everyone. I wanted to do a video in regards to the 2020 Democratic primary, but before I get to that, just a quick update on Trump and the border wall. He's officially declared national emergency on, I believe it was February 15th. Um, and so I I had said going into this, I thought for a while like he wasn't going to do it, but then the day before, I thought to myself, I think he actually might do this because he doesn't have that much to lose. And not that I agree with the decision, of course, but I mean his base of support will always go to him, and he'll be able to point and be like, I'm getting the wall built to the extent that it is being built because it'll probably be held up in court. So it's not like this will happen overnight. I think it's not. He wants to do it quickly, and we'll get to that in a second. But I think even if it doesn't end up getting built by the next election, he can still use that as a campaign issue. Um, to the extent that it alienates that Trump alienates himself from the rest of the Republicans. I mean, I think the energy is with Trump, and the Republicans, they aren't like the base of voters, the regular everyday people that are Republicans. They go more towards Trump, I think, and they're not as loyal to the rest of the Republican Party. Um, and I mean, Trump wasn't all that conservative on a lot of issues too, so you could point to that. Like it's not necessarily a affinity to conservative values that are drawing people to Trump. But this is interesting. In his announcement of this in the Rose Garden, he said, "quote This is a real quote. I don't need to do this, but I'd rather do it much faster." So, like, that's not an emergency. Like, this is not what an emergency actually is. Then is so he undermined his own argument, and I think that him saying that alone might actually really hurt him in the end in terms of going to court and trying to prove that this is an emergency. Like it's it's certainly not going to help him. Like we know that, and the lack of evidence of this being a real emergency, and we've gone over that plenty of times in terms of immigration. So I don't need to go over that, but yeah, like him saying that, it's really baffling, and like, I wonder if that was a real slip up or what his intentions were with that. But for what it is, he basically stabbed himself in the back. So um, there's that added bonus to it, and hopefully, I mean, hopefully there's not that much wasted on this wall. And I honestly I want there to be a resolution in terms of the people that are being detained, and oftentimes parents are separated from their kids. I want a resolution in terms of that, and unfortunately, that probably won't be that end won't be in sight, at least in the near future. But that's where we're at with the wall, and it's a national emergency in quotes. And I mean, where it goes from here, it's going to go to court, and if the federal courts rule against Trump, he'll appeal, and then it'll go to the Supreme Court. So the Supreme Court, I think they're likely to vote against Trump. That they're likely to say that he is wrong in this instance, but they might just say that regardless of whether it's a national emergency or not, he has the authority to do so. But I think it's going to broaden that power so much more that perhaps it's not. Perhaps the Supreme Court will look at that and say, this actually will be negative in terms of executive authority and what is allowed for the president. I mean, it's obviously expanding his power. So that's where we're at with that. So let's get to the 2020 primary. Now, I was waiting to do this video because I wanted to wait and see who would declare and try and get to the point where maybe people were done declaring. But today, Bernie Sanders announced that he's running for president again. Much joy to me. like I'm very happy about that. So I just decided it's time to do this video now, even though there probably will be a few other people to announce, and we'll get into all of them. I mean, it's more or less an incomplete list. This list that I made is basically all of the people that will be talked about inevitably. I have them in certain categories: the players and the fakers. You can also say contenders, pretenders. We have people that will possibly jump into the race, and then we have the laughables, the people that, who knows if they'll actually jump in the race, but just completely this is a joke. For a lot of people on here, it is a little bit of a joke too. I mean, the players are really where the real energy will be. So without further ado, let's get into this. Bernie Sanders, of course, and also let me stipulate here, I'm not going into each candidate's record in detail, because that would be, way too long of a video. I'm basically giving a brief overview. I'm talking mostly about their negative points, things that will affect them negatively, because that matters. I mean, even for Bernie, there is a few things, or I have two things here, but regardless, it's not, if you want a real in-depth view, you're going to have to do your own research, and there's videos out there. You can look at Secular Talk, who's been doing breakdowns of candidates, and there's plenty of other ways. I mean, this is the way that it should be done. You got to go through everyone with a fine-tooth comb, and that's kind of something you do on your own. But I'm just giving my general breakdown for anyone who's interested to hear. So Bernie Sanders, his policy platform is pretty straightforward. We all know where he's coming from. He's been saying the same thing for decades. And obviously in the 2016 primary, he made quite an impression and gained a lot of popularity. And so far, from the reports I've seen, he's on track to break the single-day campaign donation record. He's, last I saw, at $3.3 million, all from small donors. So, he's making history pretty much today, and I think he's basically jumped into this as the front runner now. I think that's where the energy is. And that's basically all there is to it. I mean, he's the most popular politician in the country, according to a lot of polls. But things that will be used negatively against him, the sexual harassment scandal within his campaign, which I think is largely used as a smear against him, because there's no proof that he knew of the sexual harassment allegations of people that are in his campaign. There's no evidence he knew of that. People talked about the wage gap in his campaign. The truth is, people, they negotiated their salaries individually on a case-by-case basis, basically. And so when the campaign discovered that there was disparities, they fixed that problem. So really, that's a pro-feminist move by Bernie there. But inevitably, I think this sexual harassment scandal will be used against him, and I think he'll be able to fight against it. He'll have plenty of things to point to in terms of his supporting women's rights throughout his whole record. Something else that will be used probably negatively against him is he did vote for the 1994 crime bill, which a lot of people did, to be fair. And it's hard to really comprehend when you're voting at that time that it would lead to the levels of mass incarceration that we see now, to a degree. I mean, there were a lot of punitive things like 3 strikes laws that were, that's pretty obvious. But, he's not a fortune teller. He's not he's not going to be privy to the private prison industry boom that happened basically as a result of this. And there were good things in the crime bill as well. I mean, it was mostly bad, but there was the Violence Against Women Act, I believe. So I think, though, he said somewhat recently that he didn't regret his vote for that bill, probably for those reasons of the positive things. But I think that probably will be brought up. But basically, that's it for Bernie. I mean, like, he doesn't have that many negatives, honestly. He's very ideologically consistent, and that's what I think people want to see. I'd really love to stress that point more. Like, I don't think it's so much about people want to, that they want, like, the most leftist socialist candidate. I think maybe there is a degree of truth in that, because we're moving to the left, I think, as a country, and the Democrats are in general. So that may be true, but I think more so people want to see someone who's genuine. They want to see someone who's not just going wherever the political winds take them. They want someone who has real strong opinions, is what I think it comes down to, mostly. Then we get to Elizabeth Warren, who, yeah, I mean, in my view, is the second best senator in the country to Bernie Sanders. Yeah, like, she's had a lot of positive things. She started the CFPB, excuse me, that helped get money back to defrauded Americans that were taken by credit card companies, banks, and that had real tangible benefits to people. I mean, billions of dollars we're talking about were given back to people that were defrauded. And recently, she just came out in favor of universal child care. So it's going to be interesting to see what she's like going up against Bernie, because she's basically trying to out-left him. That's what I viewed that move as, the universal child care thing. And she even was for recently making nationalizing certain drugs so that it's nationalizing generic drugs, basically, whenever the free market can't address that, in terms of making them cheaper for people. So I think, that's good. It's good that she comes out in favor of these things, but I can't help but think maybe Warren is doing this as a way to outflank Bernie and kind of trick people into thinking, like, she's the more leftist candidate, because she has to know, like, these proposals probably won't pass, at least in the immediate future. I mean, and maybe she's talking about if she's elected president, but, like, it's like super bold, idealistic ideas that Bernie wouldn't even say, but Bernie probably is for if you were to ask him about it, but he just doesn't, put that as much at the forefront. But yeah, I don't know. Well, I guess we'll see. She's obviously, she is trying to outflank Bernie, though, on the left. She's not looking for the moderate lane. She's looking for the progressive lane. So things that will impact her negatively, she voted for the Trump military budget, which I think people on the left are not going to be happy with because of the large increases to the military that it had. Her scandal in regards to her Native American heritage, and I believe she's said sorry for or apologized for what she's done. I mean, and basically said that she lied about it for the most part. She had written on an application, like, I don't know how long ago, but that she was not going to be, or that she was Native American, excuse me. But this is going to come back, I think, to haunt her. And she can go on the apology tour and all that, but, when it comes down to it, like, these scandals, they hurt people. You can look at Hillary and her email scandal. I don't know how much that hurt her, really. Like, it may have been more her politics. I mean, Warren's politics are so much better. So will this Native American heritage scandal hurt her in terms of getting votes? I think maybe. I think there's a number of people out there. I don't know how big that number is, but certain people will not forgive her for that, and I don't know if it will have an impact. Um, but regardless, yeah, I think she's definitely the second best, um, for sure. And I mean, she's someone who takes after Bernie Sanders. Like that's kind of her hero. Um, then we get to Tulsi Gabbard, who is my third favorite. Um, she, oh yeah, let me make one distinction here. Warren Warren focuses a lot on the economic side of things, which I like. She's very detailed when she speaks, very wonky. And so the economics is kind of her wheelhouse, and that's what she likes to focus on. Tulsi Gabbard is a veteran, and she likes to focus on the U.S. being non-interventionist. She wants that to happen and ending the regime change wars. That's really kind of her big issue that she talks about, which is fine. I think it's good to harp away on both, but this is where she's coming from, and she has a level of experience being a veteran. But she's good on the issues. I think there's nothing to suggest that she's really being inconsistent, but there are criticisms that are legitimate against her. She has an anti-gay past. Her father was, virulently anti-gay and had organizations to try and block gay rights in Hawaii, I believe. I don't believe it was a national effort. I think it was only in Hawaii. So, and she was, there with him with the anti-gay stuff. And I don't have the quotes, but she did say things that were anti-gay as far back as like 2006. And more recently, I believe it was 2014 or 2015 when she made these comments. She made these torture comments that were not good. I mean, they basically muddied the waters. And she was like, "Oh, I sympathize with both sides." And it's like I could understand, like she talked about the ticking time bomb scenario. Like, what if you have this person who has this information, and like we know if we don't get that, people will die. Well, like, this isn't how it works. It's not an episode of 24. So like that's not how you run a country. It's unconstitutional. In the Eighth Amendment, it says no cruel and unusual punishment. So, it's a principled stance. It's not about, like, oh, what about this scenario that I present to you that will probably never happen anyways. It's about what you do on principle and what the government should be allowed to do. She also, she made a name for herself a little bit going on Fox News when Obama would not say radical Islam is the enemy, essentially. So he refused to say those words, and she, I don't know if I would say attacked him for not saying those words, but she was critical of him, and saying like, yeah, that's the enemy, which I don't think it's that big of an issue. Like Obama, like I guess there's a political reason to not say those words, radical Islam, because you don't want to alienate Muslims. It is true though that jihadism, Wahhabism is a big problem, and that is fundamentally Islamic in nature. It's fundamentalist Islam. So it's not to say that Islam is bad as a whole, but that interpretation is bad. It's a radical form of Islam. So getting, hung up in the words it can be frustrating because, I almost see both points, basically, is what I'm saying. Like I get the political angle Obama was trying to go for, not trying to alienate Muslims, but at the same time, like Tulsi Gabbard trying to make it like it's this big issue. Like I think that it speaks to her, where her mind is at least, and she also has support from Hindu nationalists, pretty shady connections to Modi in India, who is basically like the Trump of India. So. And she received money from the Hindu nationalists, I believe, too. So that's troubling. Um, and in terms of the anti-gay stuff, I mean, her voting record is pro-gay, so she didn't vote in an anti-gay way. But I mean, it's not to say that her comments should be forgiven necessarily. Um, so yeah, in my view, like I think she's good on the issues. I put her lower though on the hierarchy just because I think we shouldn't have people with problematic pasts. It's the same thing with Warren and the Native American heritage scandal. I mean, like that I don't know if that hurts her as much. Like I said, I think this stuff with Gabbard will probably hurt her more. Um, so in my view, what we need to do, it's like two criteria what the Democrats need to do. We need someone who is the most progressive and someone who is the least flawed is what it comes down to. And if you notice, Hillary like fit none of those. So then we get to the last player in the game, unfortunately, and it's Kamala Harris. I think outside of the more progressive ones, like I said, Sanders, Warren, and Gabbard, Kamala Harris probably has the better chance of winning the nomination. Just because you know a lot of people showed up for her rally at her when she launched her campaign. She had the record for single day donations before Bernie just beat it today. But so there is some momentum behind Kamala Harris, but you know there's problems with her record. She's trying to present herself as a progressive prosecutor, but this is, you know, I find not to be true. I almost think like it's undebatable. So examples of that, I mean, she refused to prosecute Steve Mnuchin of One West Bank when they were foreclosing on people early after the Great Recession. I don't know, it was after or during the Great Recession, like, you know. But regardless, she refused to prosecute Steve Mnuchin, even though her office told her, like, you should do this. And actually, they were saying, like this is just what we know, like the shady things that he's been doing. This is just what we know now. If we, like, you know, dig deeper, we'll probably find more things. But she didn't go after him, and that was because of campaign donations. That's where her money was coming from, at least part of it. She criminalized truancy. And there's video of her talking about how she wanted to scare parents and kids. So as a prosecutor, she gets a badge, and that badge goes on her letterhead. So she sent out a letter to all the parents with this friggin' like cop badge on there and saying, it's like up to a year of jail time if your kid cuts class or skips school. And she did end up convicting people on these charges. So people went to jail for this. And, you know, she's laughing about it in the video. So it's like, it's so backwards to me because, I mean, there's kind of a lot of criticisms you could take of it. Like, first of all, people who are truant, it may not be just as simple as like they're skipping school to be like rebellious. What if the schools that they're going to, if it's in a bad neighborhood, maybe they don't feel safe in these places. Maybe they feel bullied. Maybe, and even if it's not that, let's say the parent has to work a lot of jobs just to make ends meet, and they struggle with trying to maintain that their kid is going to school because they have to work so much. So inevitably, this hurts people that are lower class. So you're going after really the wrong people at the end of the day. You're going after people that have less means. She was for civil asset forfeiture, which is basically cops being able to rob you. They don't have to charge you with a crime as long as they suspect you of committing a crime. They can take your property, whatever it might be. It could be your wallet, or it could be something small, or it could be your car. It could be virtually anything. and you don't get it back, like regardless if you get charged with a crime. She lied about her record on weed. So she was on the Breakfast Club, this podcast, and she, the person who was asking her questions said, people say that you're against legalizing weed, and she said no, but that's not true. She, there's multiple instances of this too. She could have moved to try and move weed off the Schedule 1 to make it like the Schedule 1 is like the highest priority to the DEA. She could have moved to take it off there, at least at a state level. Obama, when he was raiding dispensaries in California, she put out like a tepid statement that wasn't critical at all, even though like the states legalized. So that's obviously, yeah, the federal government has the right to do so, but she was not trying to defend her state and what the laws that they passed. She'd also laughed off a question in regards to legalizing weed because her opponent, who was a Republican, actually was for legalization of weed, and she laughed it off and said he's entitled to his opinion. So, I mean, this is... Here's the thing. She could have taken a different approach and been like, I thought that then. I've since come around. I've changed my mind for reasons X, Y, and Z. And it doesn't even... It could be a made-up story. It could be whatever. But she chose to make her record seem like it's progressive. And this is what her whole strategy has been. She's proud of her record, I believe is what she said at her launch. So we can go through her record. I'm giving you the short list here. Like, there's plenty of things we could point to with her. There's things that are very problematic with Kamala Harris. And it reminds me of Hillary again, because she's going to try and portray herself as being progressive, like she's saying she's for Medicare for all, saying she's for the Green New Deal, but how much of this is just symbolic and like you want to try and gain the left's votes? Like you haven't been outspoken on these issues. Oh, I know. She also one of her first moves in the Senate actually was to co-sponsor a bill that was critical of Obama because the UN voted. The UN Council voted to condemn Israel's illegal settlements. There was no consequences for this. They were just saying that they're illegal and they're wrong. The U.S. didn't even veto it. They just didn't vote in that. But everyone else voted to condemn Israel. And so this bill was critical of Obama for basically being spineless and not standing up for Israel. So... And she has connections to AIPAC too. Like, it's more of the same old, basically. Like, and she's trying to repackage herself and make herself look super progressive. But some people might be fooled by it. I don't know, but I think in the end, she might come off looking a little bit more phony. Actually, I mean, like I just saw photo of her like putting hot sauce on her greens, and it's like the photo itself, like really, like they tried to make that look candid. It wasn't candid, like, to be honest. I don't know, I guess, but that looked staged to me. And it's like, here's the thing. We already went through the hot sauce with Hillary. Like, I can't believe I'm talking about hot sauce right now, but like this was a thing. Like Hillary said that she carries hot sauce with her everywhere, and then people on the Breakfast Club, again, this is where Hillary was. She was like, they were like, don't you think that people will interpret that as, like, you trying to, like, hound for black people's votes? And she's like, is it working? So it's, like, out of touch. And she's doing that again, Kamala Harris, and, like, posting this picture. Yeah, like, maybe you might say it's harmless or whatever. It doesn't mean much. But I think in the end, like, your optics, like, what you put out there matters. So it matters that like you didn't know that was just going to be laughed at, and at the very least, like you're just trying to look like you're relatable. Like she didn't even have a policy platform on her campaign site. As far as I know, it's still not up there. Um, so I don't know and people are coming out and endorsing her like crazy. For what? Like I don't know why. Because she's signed on to these lefty things like Medicare for All and Green New Deal, like I said, but we know that her record is not that progressive. So I'm a little bit fed up because I'm starting to see that people are trying to kind of circle around Kamala and make her the front runner. But we'll see. We'll see how it goes. So now we're into the fakers category. These are people that they have no chance. Like, come on, no. You're not. If anything, these people are angling for cabinet positions or VP position. Like they're not. They're just not going to win. It's not going to work. Cory Booker, and I mean, like of these, he has the biggest chance of getting the nomination, but I really do not think he's going to get it. And his cons are he's pro charter school like crazy, and actually like not only that, he bashes public education all the time. He's best friends with Betsy DeVos. He like fawns over her all the time. He gets the most Wall Street money than any other Democrat. Sell out to big pharma as well, and he's going to be like, "Pharma is my state's flagship industry in New Jersey." Well, yeah, dude. Like that doesn't mean you should be beholden to them. Like you need to do what's right for the American people. Same thing with Beto and oil, but we'll get to him. The drug reimportation bill. Bernie had a bill that would have allowed us to reimport drugs from Canada because they get them at a cheaper price. It's the same drugs, and Canada actually has stricter standards than we do with the FDA. And he didn't vote for it at first, and then he was basically shamed into voting for it. And he was trying to make these rationalizations on TV about it and be like, it's like, oh well, I thought that the standards weren't going to be right, and this was a symbolic vote anyways. It was just like an add-on to another. Like, no, dude, like that makes no sense. If it was symbolic, then why wouldn't you just vote for it on principle then? If you think like, oh, it's not going to happen, like vote for it symbolically. It's like and the terms of the standards, like that was not true. Like he just was lying about that. And this is what I was talking about before, where it's like, the dude is just trying to go wherever the political winds are. He's just an amoeba, this guy, Cory Booker. Like he'll say and do anything. I mean, like he was defending Mitt Romney when Obama was attacking him for being part of Bain Capital, which screwed over people with capital equity, or I forgot what the word is. But regardless, Bain Capital was a horrible company, and he's all like, oh, God, like, it's ridiculous. He's defending these elite assholes, honestly. Like, come on. So he has no chance. Like, let's be serious. Kirsten Gillibrand, again, no chance. Just no chance. She's as irrelevant as could be. Like, who even knows about her? But she co-sponsored an anti-BDS bill, which is a huge deal. Like, regardless of what you think of Israel here, it's a problem when we establish in this country, like, what it basically means is you won't get a federal contract if you support BDS, boycott, divestment, and sanctions from Israel, in order for them to try and reach a two-state solution, or at least end the occupation. And so that is the government singling out a specific form of political speech. This is what the First Amendment was made for. It's not for, like, I love apple pie, and I want to go on TV and say that. And if the government stepped in and said I couldn't say that, then yeah, that would be a First Amendment violation. But the point is, it's about political speech. It's about It's about speech where it's controversial, where people are going to be possibly offended. This is why the ACLU defended the KKK. So, yes, that matters. Like, regardless of where you stand on Israel, it's a First Amendment issue. Um, and she was a former Blue Dog Democrat. That's probably going to come back and haunt her, honestly, because I mean the party's just moving left, and she's changed, a little bit. Like she's one of the people who's kind of putting on this like leftist hat, if you will, and trying to say she's for Medicare for all. For I don't know if she said Green New Deal, but she's trying to be leftist, basically, at least on the surface. But again, like I think it does matter if you were talking about it before versus like you're just doing it now for the political gain. Um, Not to say that like I'm not saying I'm not happy that they are saying this because they should say that they should be for the right position. But I think we have to distinguish between people who are like just saying it now and versus people who have been saying it for a lot longer, like Bernie and even Elizabeth Warren has kind of been on this page for a longer time. Then we get to Amy Klobuchar, who's just we're getting more and more irrelevant as we go down now, and like she really has no chance because she's not even doing the game of like I'm for Medicare for all, universal college. Like I'll say that I'm doing that to get votes. She just scoffed at them and called them aspirations. So she's not even pretending to be leftist. She's trying to run on the centrist ticket basically, and that's her lane that she's trying to go for. Like it's not going to work. This is not the party for you anymore. And look at what Hillary did. Like Hillary was not that strong leftist at all. Like she ran basically as a moderate, as a centrist. So just completely ridiculous. She supported the Patriot Act. She even voted to expand it, believe it or not. She has a D rating from normal, so she has a hard on drug stance. Yeah, like these are things that are going to come back, I think, at her. And just in general, like her record as being a centrist. Also, she apparently has a record of being very violent to her staff and throwing binders at them and just being overall abusive, verbally at least, and physically, because like throwing a binder. But I think ultimately very irrelevant. She's not gonna win, and who knows if she'll even get past 10%. Like honestly. Then Julian Castro. I believe he's in the House. So, I would say if you're already like in a place of like if you're already a representative to a degree, like you're higher up on the rankings in terms of likelihood that you'll get in. But no, he's not going to win either because his launch video was just it was completely devoid of substance, just platitudes and cliches all day long. And who knows what he's saying? I mean, like he's I guess going for the more centrist angle too, but like who knows about this guy? Like no one's gonna vote for him. Like it's just like I say, like we're going down this list. Like the more irrelevant you are, like and less people know about you, yeah, you're not gonna win. At least people know about Kamala Harris. Like, but yeah, just pointless. Andrew Yang, who is not a politician, he's a businessman, and he's running on pretty much humane capitalism. The one thing that he's good for is a universal basic income, which people on the left had disagreements about that. I think, that down the line we probably will need it, dealing with automation. Like in theory, we wouldn't want automation to completely replace all jobs. At least that's what I would like to think. But yeah, it probably will end up hurting people. and I'm all for going after big business, but I think also we have to be a little bit practical and look at the way the world is going, and this is just a safety net for people in case there is that day where that job is no longer available to people and people don't have to suffer. We can have the basics afforded to them. So I think that's okay. Other than that, like, I think his humane capitalist angle is just, it's not gonna go over well with the Democratic Party because we're turned off by capitalism, honestly. Um, we and I don't want to say, like, some people probably do want to abolish capitalism, like they want a completely socialist country and do away with that. But not so. So, anyways, not to say that like everyone is anti-capitalist in the Democratic Party now, but I think people want to just see more of an emphasis on socialist ideologies and strengthening that element in our country. Now we got John Delaney, and Pete Buttigieg. I don't know. I put some certain things like that these people did that are negative. Like, I don't even know why I did, to be honest, because these people they have no chance. But John Delaney, he wants to raise the corporate tax rate to 21%, which, if I'm not mistaken, it was 35%, and then Trump took it to like 15, or no, Trump took it from 35% to 21. I think John Delaney wants to raise it to 23. So like yeah, good for you for that really bold move. It's like, yeah, fine, like, and he wants to do that to pay for infrastructure, but I think that's just a talking point, honestly. Like raise it more than that. At least like fight for that. At least fight for raising it more than freaking 2%. He's not for Medicare for all. Supports TPP. Then we get to Pete Buttigieg. Like the name alone, you're out. Like, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to like rag on his name just for that. But honestly, like, people I think care. They care about the look of it. Like, it's not a good look for you, man. I'm sorry. Like, I'm sorry that you were born with that name, but he says he's supports single payer. However, wants to take an incrementalist approach. Yeah, like the majority of the things I saw with this guy were pretty positive, but yeah, let's be honest, he has no chance. There's no one even knows about the guy. Let's get to the possibles. These are people that have shown signs that they want to run, but haven't announced yet. Joe Biden, Beto O'Rourke, Sherrod Brown, Jeff Merkley, Eric Holder, and Stacey Abrams. So quickly, Biden, basically, another Hillary. He's shown that that's the lane he wants to run into. He like just wants to be the centrist guy and be like, I think free trade is good. Like no, dude, stop. He's so yeah, and I think there was even an article that came out in Politico that was written by someone who's like in the Biden circle. Like she was either, I think she might be an advisor to him actually, currently. But regardless, like, she's in his friend circle, and she wrote that he should do a unity ticket with him and Mitt Romney. Like, yeah, I would love to see that because you're gonna get destroyed, dude. Beto O'Rourke. So he's been dropping hints like, oh, I'm gonna decide at the end of the month, and we'll see. I tend to think if he's dropping those kind of hints, he probably will run. Same with Biden, because he's been dropping too many hints at this point. Beto O'Rourke, I mean, so with him in the oil, like I mentioned before, he takes like a bunch of oil money, and he's in Texas, so he's going to say, like, that's my state. But, again, people care about the macro picture. They care about the fact that climate change is a real crisis. So you taking money from oil companies is not going to be a good look, or it just shows that you're not necessarily going to be tied down to making progressive change in that direction of climate change. So people, rightfully so, probably aren't going to trust you in that regard. Sherrod Brown, he's someone who, like, will kind of give lip service to certain leftist ideas, but more or less runs as a centrist. From what I can see, I mean, like, he's not for Medicare for all. He's trying to go for a Medicare buy-in. I think if he gets into the race, he'll make a scene a little bit maybe at the debates, but again, I don't think he has a real shot. Jeff Merkley, I don't even know enough about him to comment, and he's not going to win. Let's be honest. Eric Holder, former Attorney General for Obama. I'll give him this. He's a good speaker, from what I've heard, but I think people want something they want a true vision for the country. They want something that's a clear vision, that they don't have to guess what you believe. And to the extent Holder believes in anything, we haven't seen anything of this guy. So if he's just going to suddenly jump into the race, he's going to have to differentiate himself a lot more, and I don't know how he can do that at this point. I mean, would people buy him as a progressive? I don't know. And if he would run as a centrist, that's probably not going to be very popular. Stacey Abrams, she was running for governor in Georgia, and honestly, she was cheated out of that. I won't get into reasons why, but she is rising to prominence now, and I think she's decent. From what nothing that I think would be standout progressive from her, but I like what she says, and I don't think she'll probably win, but it would be nice to see her in the race. I think just because she would be a little bit of the bridge between the centrists and the progressive wing. I think she can bridge that gap a little bit, so it would be nice to have her in the race, and then she drops out and maybe endorses Bernie or something like that. But just spitballing here. Then we get to the Laughables. Michael Bloomberg. So let's run our own billionaire now, and some people think this. Not even necessarily pundits on TV. I've heard regular people tell me they want Bloomberg to run. And I'm surprised by that, but this is not gonna I don't think this is the path to take, and certainly not Bloomberg of all the billionaires you could have picked. Just so blah, nothing. All of these people, I feel I'm a step away from falling asleep just talking about half of these people after I got through all of the good ones. Just so I want nothing to do with you. Just go away. John Hickenlooper, who would probably be more successful as a breakfast cereal, but also talked about running a unity ticket with John Kasich. I really want to see a unity ticket so bad. I don't care who it is that comprises it, but I really want to see that, because it's just going to be a shit show for them. They have no idea what's coming. These people in the elite circles, they think that everyone else thinks like them, and they're the country's so polarized and divided. What they want is someone who's going to bring us together in unity and all this stuff. Well, actually, what we want is someone who's going to stand for something and not just the platitudes and cliches. Then we have Terry McAuliffe. I don't know. I don't care anymore. You're not going to win. Just stop. Howard Schultz now. I'm taking it. He's not in the laughable category, to be clear. I mean, maybe to a degree, because he's not going to win. You would never win. He's not necessarily running as a Democrat. Um, he wants to run as an independent, and he's especially going to run as a Democrat if he thinks that the Democratic nominee is too leftist. And this is a problem. He is his own category of evil in this, to be honest. And let me just say this. Okay. In terms of him being a spoiler of the election, um, and you could, I guess, say the same thing about Jill Stein. But where I would differentiate is that Jill Stein worked to the point where she got in terms of her political career. She was an activist. She, it wasn't as if she just bought her way in like Howard Schultz did. I mean, he's a billionaire CEO, and he just announced that he's going to run for president, and all of a sudden gets a town hall, like as if there was grassroots support for that. Like who is asking for this guy? And you know what his approval rating is? 4%. 4% amongst independents, Republicans, and Democrats. Like, no one likes you. And somehow he's getting a town hall. Somehow people are talking about him like he's this serious candidate now. He's bought his way into this conversation. And it's quite clear, like, if he were to run as an independent and be a centrist, he would definitely take votes away from the Democrat. He would take away from that little bit, the little bit in the constituency that is more centrist and moderate in the Democratic Party. It's not very big, but it might be enough to sway the election to Trump. So I think ultimately, it's such a contradiction. If your complaint about Stein was that she hurt Hillary Clinton, you can't turn around and support Howard Schultz. It just makes no sense. I'm not begrudging him for getting in the race. He has the right to do that, but he didn't do anything in order to do that. He just bought his way in, and he has no platform. He's talked about what he's against. He's talked about he's not for Medicare for all. He's not for the Green New Deal. Not for all the things that are popular now in the Democratic Party that are leftist ideas. He wants to be the centrist guy. He talks about all the time. We have the far right, we have the far left, and they're both equally bad. Is basically the line of thinking he puts in place. That is so. It's so childish to think that way, because the far left in this country is really not all that left. Look at all the other industrialized countries in this world. We have every country in Europe and Australia and like pretty much everywhere else has single payer healthcare, and we don't. So this is not that radical, but it's deemed radical in this country's political discourse, unfortunately. And Howard Schultz is a negative impact, and I really hope he doesn't run as an independent in the general. I hope that there's just so much disdain and so much backlash that he'll drop out. I really do, because look, he's going to take away votes from the Democrat, and if it was a centrist, well, let me not say that. If it was Bernie or just any stronger left candidate, and they actually were a strong left candidate in the Democratic nomination, and he took those votes away, again, it's not like with Hillary and Jill Stein to me, because Hillary chose to run the strategy that she did and not give concessions to the progressive wing, and she was more centrist. She could have given lip service to those ideas if she wanted to, but she chose not to. This is more like the tide of the party is changing, and the elites are telling us, no, that's not acceptable. You have to do what we say. So let's actually stick with what the party wants. And this is what they want. They want a strong leftist message. And Howard Schultz might come in and spoil that. Hopefully he doesn't.